You can continue.
Okay, Novala. Greetings to the people of Mpumalanga and all other stakeholders in the entire province. My name is Comrade Gqeberha, Deputy Secretary of the Eastern Cape Province, SANCO. Allow me to greet all the people that are with us. Greetings to the Provincial Chairperson of SANCO. Greetings to the Provincial Secretary of SANCO, Comrade Utuba, Chairperson, Comrade Dr. Mike Baso in the Eastern Cape, and a big greetings to the Eastern Cape SANCO branches led by the regional executives. Let me not shout out our listeners in the entire outer part of our province. Differently, allow me to greet our visitors who are also our members of SANCO. First, let me name Professor Ken Sanji, who was the first General Secretary of SANCO. Again, let me greet Comrade Ruth Bingu, former National President of SANCO, and let me greet Dr. Dozamile Botha. Allow me to greet the media, all the papers that are with us today. Let me greet them in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Let me first welcome you here in this gathering, whereby you will hear from our chairperson what is going to happen. But let me just touch the first one. As Eastern Cape Province, we are preparing to go to the provincial conference. As we did our plan, whereby we draw our roadmap, which is going to guide us. What must we do at what time and where? Now, as the Eastern Cape Province, we are here just to present, starting by what we want to do. That is the documents that are going to lead us to our provincial conference. But before I just take the seat out, let me just say, Comrade Chairperson, Comrade Mike Baso, let me welcome you to take the stage and welcome all the people that are with us today. Can I hand over to you, the Chairperson, to take us through? Thank you. Comrade Mike? Comrade Mike Baso, the Chairperson of Eastern Cape? I'm handing over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Program Director. Comrade Gqeberha, the leadership of SANCO in this province, led by Novala, the Mandela regime, which is part of this stretching in clusters, the provinces of SANCO throughout the country, the entire membership of all various organizations in the eastward struggle, the people of South Africa and the entire world, that is on the platform today, our guests. Thank you very much for being here and welcome you to this important occasion of presenting the discussion documents for our coming 6th Provincial Conference. More importantly, I would like to thank the media houses, especially the Mpuma Kapa TV, which is always amongst ourselves, giving us a platform to present our case as SANCO. Colleagues, as we are preparing for this historic conference, as the PEC, we took a decision that our conferences should not be entangled or concentrate only on the elections of leadership, but rather to have these discussion documents to enrich our membership as well as our communities about our mission and vision as SANCO, as a progressive civic organization. In the spirit of renewal and rebuilding SANCO in this province, we want to ensure that our organization is very strong and vibrant in protecting the rights of the people in our communities, as well as for the improvement and the quality of life of our communities. So, we wish this session to be successful and come up clearly as what is expected by our people on the ground. Once again, we want to thank everybody for being here, and as SANCO in this province and the leadership, we have taken a firm decision that this organization will never fail you, the people of this province, as well as the people of the country. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Comrade Pastor, by giving us the clarity of the day, what's going to happen, and why we are here. And now, I am going to hand over to the Secretary. But let me just be out. As the Chairperson have alluded that we are going to have the documentation. These documents are still going to the regions. But now we just want everybody to know and feel that we are going to the conference. Can I hand over to you, Secretary of Eastern Cape Province? Thank you very much. Over to you, Comrade Johnny Shuba.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you, Comrade Provincial Secretary, Program Director of this occasion, and good morning to the Provincial Chairperson, Dr. Mike Basu. Good morning to our guest, former President of SANCO, Mama Uru, and good morning to Ngalapoto, founders of the civic organizations in the Eastern Cape, Dr. Tovini Bota, and good morning to the entire leadership of SANCO in the Eastern Cape, and good morning branches, leadership of Champion Cluster that is with us today. I think, Chair, as you have indicated, good morning to the media houses, Mpuma Kapa TV and the Herald. As you have indicated, Chair, that today it's a very important occasion in the history of SANCO in the Eastern Cape, where as the PEC we took a conscious decision that never again shall we go to conference just for the mere election of leaders who will leave that conference without having been given a mandate, thorough mandate by the branches. Primarily because, Chair, hence we took a serious decision to commission the founders of SANCO, Prof. Dan Sandi, to look at the issue that bedevils South Africans and the role of SANCO insofar as how we can cap criminality that is ravaging our economy. And we've also commissioned Mama Ruth Bengu, former president of SANCO, to say we hear the issue of the second economy. Each and every department of the state in South Africa talks to the cooperatives, and what is it that we can do as SANCO to ensure that there is prosperity insofar as the second economy is concerned, and we encourage communities to participate in the cooperatives and take charge of their livelihood and also partake in the economic benefit of our country. And we have also commissioned comrade Dr. Tozamile Bota as the founding fathers of SANCO, or of civic movement, PEPCO, or in particular, the intention of the establishment of SANCO. Why all of a sudden, and we see that every other civic movement, whether you talk of Ratepayers Association of Umtata, whether you talk of Civic Independent, whether you talk of SANCO, the recently formed organization, why there is a thirst from communities of these other civic to contest election? Why can't we just stay where we are supposed to stay and fight for the independence, and fight for the residents, and fight for services of our people? And the issue of coalitions that are currently engulfed the local state, what should be our approach if we were to leave the alliance? And if we were to leave the alliance, must we really contest, or must we defend communities? As SANCO is meant to protect the autonomy of at all material times, because we must uphold and jealously guard the rights of the people, you know, and reflect, you know, again, on how those who have delegated to occupy the state power, their conduct, and interrogate whether it serves the purpose that we have elected them to do. And then not shy away from playing our oversight role as community leaders, you know, and instead of opportunistically find ourselves, you know, and benefiting through the proximity of a particular leaders at a certain point, or because we are not happy with particular leaders, we seem to push for the independence or moving away from the alliance, you know, and whether decisions that we're taking, we understand that civic movement, there is absolutely no ideological orientation, and they encompass everybody. But the reality of the matter, what are the roles and the devastating roles that are caused by right-wing element, or the emergence of right-wing politics across the world? I think we have seen Trump in the United States of America, and we have seen the recently defeated former president of Brazil. So though we say we are not ideologically orientated as the civic movement, what is it that we will do to preserve the freedom that we have hardly fought for and gain without selling the rights of the residents? Adapting the same posture that COSATU, because when COSATU fight for the residents, I mean for workers, they are uncompromisingly fight for workers. And what is it that we must do? Are we, to protect the residents, are we attracting the wrong kind of leadership into the ranks of SANCO? Because other threats towards the independence of the civic movement might be internally, not necessarily externally, where we attract people, you know, who lead SANCO, not because they have interest of SANCO or of residents at heart. They are a certain grouping of element who might actually, whose interest are not necessarily in SANCO, but they are outside SANCO, you know, and they come into SANCO to continue fighting their battles. What is it that we must do? Because the threat are not necessarily coming from outside. The threat might also be coming from those who occupy leadership position within SANCO and use SANCO, you know, as a refugee to continue fighting their own battles. So why don't we go back and really fight for the rights of the people? What is our posture now that recently we are seeing that almost the left is going towards the left and the right is going towards the right? The recent decision of COSATU to persuade Communist Party to contest election and the posture of the DA through its exodus of black caucus. And so it clearly, the right goes to the right and the left go to the left, and the center it's becoming vacant. What is it that we must do? Because we still have a duty to protect this freedom that we had fought for, and the residents cannot be left at the behest of the self-righteousness of and the self-preservation of those who would want leadership at all cost, not in the interest of residents. So these three documents will actually be disseminated to the regions and discuss, because they just work as a basis of our discussion. So that come the provincial conference, and we expect that regions will have the regional general council or extended RECs to reflect on the documents and input the document and tweak them, but we must have the basis to discuss and have the way forward, and they be original, you know. And it is not a program, Comrade Chair, it is not by chance or by mistake that we have this kind of event in the Eastern Cape. Remember, that's where we're actually the pioneers of the civic mobilization. And if you talk of the frontier wars, you know, imfazwe of the land dispossession, we almost fought in this side of the country. And hence, we must actually clear up our mind and begin to really introspect and position SANCO to fight for the benefit of the community. SANCO can no longer be used as the vehicle to fight other battles, or leaders using SANCO so that they can actually get to greener pastures, deployed in political positions. Let's fight for the residents. We must begin to ask ourselves, question, what is it that make an alliance a good alliance? Is it because the leadership gets deployed, or is it because service delivery gets delivered to the communities, you know, so that we don't have relations and alliance of convenience? We must begin to go back to the basics. And I think these discussion documents will allow our branches to reflect, will allow our branches to take a decision of fighting for the rights of communities, you know, in the midst of everybody pushing the individual agenda instead of the people's agenda. And we must always be found. We are hoping that these documents that will just be presented shortly will actually put us at the heart of the community struggle, where we belong, and perhaps do what we're supposed to have done many, many years ago, that of holding the government to account and ensure that the ruling party delivers on each and every manifesto that it has declared that it will deliver, so that our people cannot be susceptible to the new political formation. Each and every political party that comes up promise this and that, and where we are, with our previous decisions, we believed that the ANC is the only solution. We must just get the right leadership that will deliver and what is supposed to be delivered. At local government level, we can no longer tolerate the adverse finding by the Auditors General. We can no longer tolerate the scarcity of water. We can no longer tolerate all the malfeasance that are being deliberately done to erode the trust that our people has bestowed upon the African National Congress. I think SANCO, we must occupy our rightful position. So this document will allow us to not to fall into the or get trapped into the hands of the right wing and the emergency of the right wing that want to occupy our space, especially if leaders of SANCO do what is right and fight for communities. And with your permission, Chair, unless you are going to do it, we will hand over to Dr. Gqeberha to present his document, and former President Ruth Bengu to present her document. And we know that Prof, due to the medication that he had to take, probably might join us virtually, but the documents will actually be delivered to everybody, disseminated, so that the branches can begin the process of discussing those documents. Over to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Tony. Just because I see the members of SANCO there, can we give them both Chairperson and the Provincial Secretary a round of applause? Can we? I got to andiziva ke ezizandla bethu. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ndiyaziva ke ngundiyazibona. Ingalibazisanga. Let me hand it over to Dr. Tozamile Botha to give us what is expected to be done by the members of this organization while they are preparing to the conference. In fact, it's not for the conference, but what is expected to be done by us as well, the members of the organization. Let me hand over to you, Dr. Botha, to give us what you are going to tell us what we must do. We'll thank you very much. You can take the stand.
Well, Chair, thank you very much. And thank you to the leadership of SANCO Eastern Cape for giving me the opportunity to say something at this preparatory meeting for the conference of province. Let me say good morning to Comrade Ruth, to Comrade Mike, and all the comrades in the studio who are participating in this seminar. I think I'm going to start by saying what is a civic association, or what is a civil society organization. For me, the role of a civil society organization is an oversight responsibility looking after the interest of its members. In this case, SANCO's members are the community that put that leadership where it is today. When we established or formed PEPCO in 1979, the first baptismal that we experienced at the time was that the trade union movement that was organizing workers at Ford Motor Company took an exception that the workers mobilized and supported a strike which was in support of a civic leader. As a result, the trade union refused to support that strike because they said it is not a factory-based strike. It is caused by issues that arise from the communities in which we live. We thought that they were making a big mistake. Reason for that is that we said a worker lives in the community. If a worker is unable to pay school fees for his or her children, it is because he or she is underpaid at work. If he or she can't pay rent or can't pay back the bond, it is because of the exploitation that he or she is exposed to at the workplace. And therefore, we said the struggle we fight at the workplace are related to the struggles that a civic association is fighting for in the township where he or she lives. If refuse is not collected, if there is no water in the township, if there is no electricity, if the streets are full of potholes, nobody else is affected more than a member of the community who happens to be a worker or a resident within that community. Therefore, those of us who have been privileged to be put in this position must not forget that we were put in those positions by the residents of the communities in which we live. And therefore, the community expects us to speak on their behalf when things go wrong where they live. The mistake that happened in the early 90s, a question was raised by members of SANCO itself and some of the intellectuals within the service organizations that were working with communities. And that question was, what is going to be the role of SANCO or civic associations in the post-apartheid South Africa? Will it participate in the government structures, municipality, provincial or national structures of the state, or will it stay outside? The answer some of us gave at that point was that these members belong to political parties as much as they belong to civic associations. They must just be smart enough to draw a distinction between a political and being a resident within communities. If you're a member of a political party, you have chosen that party because it subscribes or contributes to your beliefs ideologically or religiously or economically, and also because you believe that that organization or party is the only body that can bring a good quality of life, bring you, the individual, the resident of a particular area, the good quality of life that you aspire to. And if that party fails to do that, you as a civic body, as a member of a civic association or a resident, you have the responsibility and the right to stand up and say, but you are not doing what we voted you to do. Therefore, I now call on you to either act in the correct way, provide to ensure the provision of services to the community that I live in, or I will cease to be a member of this organization. That sounds radical. Some of you might say, well, that's reactionary. Why are you going to move out? The reality is that you do not represent a particular ideology within the civic organization. You also have a moral obligation to ensure that that which you say you stand for is done in the interest of the community that put you in that position. That does not stop you being a member of the organization or even standing for the election. But you must accept, once you choose to be a member, or rather to stand for a political party, you are going to be subjected to the same criticism by the civic organization that a party is subjected to. So your individual role must be separated from that of the political party or from that of a civic. In other words, you are not there. You may have been voted by the civic to go in there, and the civic, of course, will call you to account when they put you in those positions. But you are not speaking there as some you may have represented ANC or EFF or any other party for that matter. Remember, the community that you live in does not represent a particular political party. It's a community of all political parties. Just like in the trade union movement, when you join a trade union movement, you are not necessarily joining a political party. You represent all the workers. Some of them may be communist, may be Christians, may be atheists, but they all are brought together by the common purpose of the relationships of production with the employer. Therefore, my view is that SANCO has made a mistake in the course of the past 30, 40, 50 years, or whatever, 40 years that it existed, because it has gone through a mutation, a transformation. And that transformation was so much influenced post-1994 by the politics of the day. Politics were no longer about fighting an identifiable opposition or enemy. The enemy became diffused among all of us. Now, the question that you've got to ask yourself is, what does SANCO stand for? Does SANCO stand for the representation and the improvement of the quality of life of the people in the communities that it represents? Or does SANCO stand for a particular ideological position? Now, I sat in a meeting of the ANC a couple of months ago, there in Gqeberha. And one of the leaders who was chairing the meeting said, it is said that when we send people to meetings, our ANC members, even with other political parties to negotiate our coalitions, they go into these meetings and represent their own personal interest. In fact, she put it this way, they go and represent their commercial interest, not the interest of the organization. Similarly, members of SANCO, when they get nominated to stand for positions in local authorities, once they get there, they cease to be representing the policy, the principles that a civic association stands for. They start looking at who is going to promote me to go to parliament or to the legislature. So personal interests tend to supersede, take over the interest of the organization. That is where the problem is. That is why I am saying, if we are not capable of separating our individual roles as community leaders, as citizens of this country, from those of the organization that we represent, then we will drag those organizations down to the ground. And we will defeat the very purpose for which the organization was set up. The same problem that you see in SANCO applies in those political parties, including the ANC. Because people have become self-centered, and unfortunately, greed has taken over, and that drives the interest of the individual members instead of them saying our goal is to improve the quality of life of the people. You find that members of political organizations and members of civil society steal from that same community that they claim to represent. They loot resources. They become thieves. And that is not what SANCO stands for. When we formed SANCO we were aware that there would be contestation for the position that SANCO stands for. There will be contestation for who has influence in the communities that we live in. And unfortunately or fortunately, the interests of SANCO in certain respects tend to coincide with those of the political parties that operate in those communities. And there's nothing you can do about that. Those political parties are mobilizing and organizing for support and to influence the people in those areas. Sometimes those interests that the parties are fighting for are the same interests that we fight for, and therefore there's no reason to be fighting one another on those issues. All that we need is to form alliances and fight and work together to achieve the best for the community. So I am therefore saying, towards my conclusion, that the role of SANCO going forward is to go back to what SANCO was formed for. Its representative, its role was to make sure that the streets are clean, people have water, clean water. There is electricity. There are no potholes. And that those who stand their claim to the governing on behalf of the people to provide services do so. Therefore, the role of SANCO becomes that of oversight to ensure that those we elected to take responsibility for the state institutions that govern the areas we live in do so, and do so effectively. So we can go into local government, but once a member of SANCO becomes a delegate for a council, which we may have nominated ourselves, we must know that member must know that he does not cease to be a member of SANCO. He belongs to SANCO. He represents, if he's nominated by us, he will stand for the interests of SANCO, and if he fails or she fails to do so, we will recall him or her. For me, for example, I'm saying the communities must start nominating and electing their community representatives so that that person is accountable to the community that elected him or her. If the person fails, then the community does not have to appeal or rather approach or request for permission anywhere else. And that person will then be recalled by the very same community that elected him or her. So for me, Chair, is that I know that what I may not have stuck paragraph by paragraph to the paper, but the essence of what I'm saying is what is embodied in that paper. SANCO must go back to basics. It is a civic association. It must retain its autonomy from political parties and state institutions and remain a representative of the communities that it comes from. Fight for those people, and some of those fights may not be very nice ones because they may clash with the political party that you so love. And if that party does not perform, you must call it to order. The reality is that if SANCO, because that's one of the problems actually I should mention, is that once SANCO formed an alliance with the ANC and the Communist Party, it then blurred the lines between the party, between the party and the civic association, and they although, I mean, then that destroys or takes away the notion of an alliance, because in an alliance, each alliance partner has got to put its positions across so that the other partners respect those and make sure that that which the coalition is founded on is sustained. And therefore, in this case, SANCO got swallowed completely, and in fact, not only swallowed, but it actually got influenced, because when the corruption that we see within the ANC became rife, SANCO members became embroiled in that and became exactly the same. As instead of playing the oversight responsibility to question things, they themselves needed to be questioned about what they are doing. They became factionalized, and therefore that factionalization of the party that we belong to tainted SANCO, and SANCO itself became factionalized. That is the problem. I want to pause there, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gqeberha. Can we please give a round of applause for the presentation of Dr. Gqeberha? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. I think now is the time of us to hear what is expected to us as the civic organization called SANCO. I'm not going to repeat because Doctor gave us the clarity of what we must do. What I like is that said, look out for the interest of its members. Thank you very much about that, Doctor. Without wasting time, let me hand over to Comrade Ruth Gqeberha, our former national president, just to make us vibe and be prepared to go to the conference. Thank you very much, Comrade Ruth. Can you take the podium? Disavakali.
Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Comrade Ruth, you are muted. Unmute.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me start by greeting the provincial chairperson of SANCO and secretary of SANCO in the Eastern Cape, members of the provincial executive committee, members of SANCO, provincial structures, the leadership of the provincial structures that is attending this session, Comrade Dan Santi, the former General Secretary of SANCO, and Comrade Tozamile Bota, who is one of the founders of SANCO, who was also part of the mass democratic movement that mobilized communities to participate in social actions which were aimed at making South Africa ungovernable by the apartheid government. Comrades, ladies and gentlemen, I'm asked to present or to unpack a discussion document which I was asked by the provincial structure of SANCO in the Eastern Cape in preparation for the oncoming conference. I was asked to develop a discussion document with a question that says, are cooperatives a viable tool to build the second economy? I start by quoting Professor Ben Turok in his book titled Wealth Does Not Trickle Down, a case for a developmental state in South Africa. He argues that no matter how strong the IMF and the World Bank advise that a country's salvation lies in economic growth, experience in developing countries is that wealth does not trickle down. When it comes from the developed sector of the economy, it benefits the rich, and simple does not enrich the poor majority. Conditions in South Africa show the same outcome. Trickling down means that cutting taxes for the wealthy would make us all better off. Also, trickling down in the case of South Africa should be understood in the context of what is commonly known as first and second economy. The second economy has become an important element in the South African government's development policy and plans to combat poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The first economy is understood to be modern, integrated with global economy, and produces the bulk of the country's wealth. The second economy is understood to be underdeveloped, isolated from the first economy and global economy. It contains a large percentage of people, including the urban and the rural poor, and contributes little to the country's wealth. In South Africa, we are made to believe that underdeveloped communities who are poor can only participate in the economy as providers of labor, workers. We are driven to think that way, that when we send our children to school, we must send them to learn skills that would make them employable. We are not made to understand that a child comes from a community that has got assets like the sun, assets like the wind, the land, rivers, waterfalls. We are made to think that those assets can only be processed by investors who are invited by our own government to come with their technologies and process electricity out of the sun that shines above a poor community, out of the wind that blows across a poor community. We are made to believe that is a good way of growing the economy, meaning that when the independent power producers are given licenses because they have the technologies that have been tested in their countries, government should consume through ESCOM that electricity and supply it to the poor. And the question is, would the independent power producers sell that electricity at a reasonable cost to ESCOM, or they would sell that electricity to ESCOM at high cost, meaning that government then would be forced to increase the cost of electricity to the poor, and government will be forced also to reduce the free electricity to the poor who cannot afford to pay for services. Yet, immediately after assuming power, ANC government adopted Masakhane campaign, which talks about cross-subsidization, meaning that the rich will be charged to subsidize the poor. Let me go back to the growth and development strategy for the second economy in terms of South Africa includes rural development and urban renewal, development of small and medium enterprises and cooperatives, Black economic empowerment, expansion of microcredits, expanded public works program, leadership and internship for the unemployed, improvement of education system to provide skills, training and development of community development workers. This paper, which I am taking SANCO members through, is designed to stimulate a discussion on whether cooperatives can develop the second economy, meaning that can cooperatives address the second economy, which in South Africa is underdeveloped, isolated from the first economy and global economy. Can cooperatives reduce poverty, unemployment, and inequality? Can cooperatives transform economic ownership and control to include underdeveloped communities? Can cooperatives build sustainable communities? To answer these questions, one would need to reflect on the history of cooperatives in South Africa and other countries to trace what informed the establishment of cooperatives, and then look at the change that took place because of the establishment of cooperatives in other countries and also in South Africa. To appreciate the role and impact of cooperatives in society, one would therefore need to understand the difference between cooperatives in other forms of businesses, the international perspective and history of cooperatives. This discussion document reflects on the international evolution of cooperatives to enable SANCO structures to find the answer to the question of whether cooperatives can develop the second economy. The Rockdale Equitable Pioneer Society, which was established in 1844. The cooperative movement has its history in the Lancashire textile town of Rockdale in England, where in 1844 harsh living conditions and inadequate consumer protection and adulteration of food by traders was widespread. The adulteration of food by traders we can make an example of what happened when the traders were no longer making enough profit for themselves. I'm going to make examples of two commodities. Bread was the staple food after the World War II. What then happened was that the traders would, if you are buying 10 kg of flour to bake bread, they would put the package 5 kgs of flour and 5 kgs of chalk dust, 1 packet. And they would give you a slip that is written, no exchange, no return. So when you open supposedly 10 kgs of flour, you would find that it's not flour. It's not only flour that has been packaged. You were only sold 5 kgs of flour, but you were charged for 10 kgs of flour. Yeah, the other 5 kg was the chalk dust. That is what is meant by adulteration of goods. Another commodity was the coal used in coal stoves to cook. The traders and the merchants would package in a 10 kg bag coal, 5 kgs of stones, and 5 kg of coal. They will sell that to the consumers and give them a slip that is written, no exchange, no return. That was the exploitation. So I am explaining this to make us understand what informed the establishment of cooperatives. Cooperatives are established by people who are tired of being exploited, either by government or by the private sector. They are also established by people who want to depend on themselves to provide themselves with the services and the goods that they utilize every day. Now, the Rockdale Equitable Pioneers started this because of that exploitation. They were 28 working men who adopted a new approach to supply of goods and other services and the provision of social and education facility to ordinary working people, setting up the Rockdale Equitable Pioneer. Very, very important for SANCO to understand that this was started by ordinary people. They are looking at how to provide services, goods and services to themselves as the community and the social and educational facilities for ordinary working people. They put together their mega capital. They did not form the cooperative to get a grant from the government. They put their own money. And then they opened a shop where they sold wholesale food at reasonable prices. A share or surplus, as they prefer to call it, was returned to members who are also consumers in a proportion of their purchase. They would call that the patronage refund, because the members, the consumers, would buy from the shop, and then there will be a card that is showing that the so-and-so has bought, and then when there are profit dividends, then the consumers also, because they are members, would then get the dividends. So it is not only the shareholders that will benefit in terms of profit, it is also the people who are using the service that will also benefit. That became the famous cooperative dividend. And the Rockdale principles of cooperatives were then formulated. And those principles include voluntary and open membership. No one was forced to join the cooperative. Democratic control, one member, one vote, which meant that all the members would establish committees that are responsible for running and controlling the cooperative. And the one member, one vote means that even if Comrade Dan Sandy had 1 million shares and the rest of the members had 10 shares each or 5 shares depending on their affordability, when it comes to taking decisions and voting, it is not the shares that vote, it's the individual. Means that the power to make decisions is not informed by the amount of money that one has. I just want to link this to what has happened in the ANC in recent years to elect the leadership. As much as we are made to believe that it is the candidate, branches, the delegates who elect, the introduction of money to buy delegates to elect leaders has actually defeated this principle of branches electing the leadership that they want. It's no longer the leadership that is elected because of the capability. It's not the members who are deciding. It's the people who have more money to buy. And SANCO has a very important role using the concept of cooperative to correct that situation. Because if SANCO understood the principles of cooperatives and apply them to implement the motto of SANCO, people-centered and people-driven development, the situation in South Africa would change the better. I'm talking about a SANCO that is self-reliant, not a SANCO that elects leaders to go and serve in certain positions of government. I'm talking about a SANCO that would drive community development using the concept of cooperative. Then the payment of limited interest on capital, the surplus allocated in proportion to member purchase, I have explained that, and educational facilities for members and workers. Very much interesting. Cooperatives in South Africa are dependent on accredited service providers to educate them. And they can feed them any poisonous type of education because it's not the members who are determining what kind of education, what skills they need. It is the sitters that are deciding and the service providers who are accredited by the sitters. Then when they have been allocated money to go and train communities and cooperatives, they then recruit. They are not responding to the felt need of cooperatives and members. They are funded on a perceived need. And those are the structures of government. Accredited service providers are there because there is a policy that allows them to exist in that way. The sitters, their way of allocating funds to service providers is a policy of government. So government, in actual fact, is moving towards the middleman and leaving the community that government, that the ANC government actually depends on them to vote the government into power. We move forward. It is not claimed that the Rockdale Pioneer Society was the very first cooperative. No, it stopped the very first cooperative store. But what we are saying is that the Rockdale idea of cooperatives has spread throughout the world, and today there are 1 billion cooperatives in operators in 95 countries. What followed the Rockdale cooperatives was the anti-Cornish movement. The anti-Cornish movement arose out of a search of solutions to the chronic socio-economic problems that plagued the maritime provinces from the late 1980s onwards. The anti-Cornish movement blended adult education, cooperatives, microfinance, and rural community development to help full resource-based communities around Canada's maritime to improve their economic and social circumstances. The anti-Cornish movement evolved from the pioneering work of Reverend Dr. Moses Cody and Reverend G. Thompson in 1920. The local community development movement originated as a response to poverty and exploitation afflicting farmers and fisheries and miners and other disadvantaged groups in the Eastern Canada. Dr. Moses Cody and his associates used a practical and successful strategy of adult education and group action that began with the needs of the local people. I was trained at Cody International Institute, which is part of the St. Francis Xavier University in Canada. The anti-Cornish movement has functioned since 1929 under the Extension Department of the St. Francis Xavier University in Antigonish. The movement brought education into the lives of ordinary working people and introduced group learning and adult education. By 1945, the anti-Cornish movement began to demonstrate possible solutions to the problem of underdevelopment. Throughout the years, it has touched the lives of thousands of people in Canada and other countries, and I'm one of them. Today, some 100 years later, especially through Cody International Institute, the anti-Cornish movement continues to promote democratically based and locally organized grassroots cooperative action in many parts of the world. The impact unfolds in many different ways. Now, the impact of that is also reflected in the large number of organizations and institutions which owe their genesis in some way to the anti-Cornish movement. The credit unions, the cooperatives of many varieties, housing cooperatives, producer cooperatives, marketing cooperatives, and workers cooperatives. Leadership development is the central concern of the anti-Cornish movement, since adult education in the socio-economic sphere is primarily about empowering people to effect change themselves. In Cody, what is being promoted is for people to understand that they are the masters of their own destiny. And the second comparison that I am making in this paper is the Mondragon Cooperative. Mondragon Cooperative is recognized for being socio-economic reality, inspired by the principles of cooperatives. The Civil War of 1936 to 1939 in Spain had left poverty and pain. There were no jobs for locals or soldiers who were returning from war. A young Catholic priest, Don Jose Arizmanrieta, arrived in Basque region of Spain in 1941 and saw a socio-economic challenges as an opportunity for making the community self-reliant in terms of education, job creation, poverty eradication, and ownership of the economy. I just want to make a comparison. We read about Makanda municipality that has got potholes, unable to collect waste, no jobs available for communities. But waste, we all know now that waste is wealth. There are technologies that can be bought by the communities who would have formed themselves into cooperatives, and then they would collect that waste, process it to generate their own energy first for their own consumption and sell the surplus. That is what cooperatives are for. When other people are complaining about Makhanda municipality that is failing to repair potholes, SANCO in the Eastern Cape could be establishing a cooperative in the very same community. Facilitate the training of that cooperative using the money that is sitting in SITAs, and talking to a TVET college that we want you to apply for money that is sitting in SITAs, construction SITA, because we want to repair the potholes ourselves. We are not going to shout to the Makhanda municipality. We are the people, and we believe in the people shall govern. The people shall govern should not be a slogan. The people shall govern should be practical. Communities building their own bridges, training themselves, using the money that is already allocated to do that. So what then happened is that in that Basque region, this priest facilitated the establishment of a vocational college which produced 5 engineers. He motivated the 5 engineers to design a paraffin heater and a paraffin stove. The paraffin heater that was designed in Mondragon, the first cooperative, is the same paraffin heater that we are using in South Africa. It was designed in Mondragon by a cooperative. The paraffin stove referred to is the primer stove that we all used before we got electricity. And some people are still using that paraffin stove. So the first cooperative that was then established, after these 5 engineers had, the vocational school had been established, and then the 5 engineers had been asked to design a paraffin stove and a paraffin heater. That was Algor. Algor are the initials of the 5 engineers that established that that designed. What is unique about Mondragon is that the focus is on knowledge. If we look at how cooperatives developed in Canada, it's CODI, International Institute, it's vocational schools. How cooperatives developed in Spain, again, it's a vocational school and then a factory. In South Africa, it's the other way around. The vocational schools are not there, they were closed, and there are very few that still exist. And the focus is on a matric certificate. A child that can't even plant a spinach, cultivate it, harvest it, and sell it. Something that can be used, something that is used in each and every house, the spinach. But the focus is on a matric certificate with no skill, with no vocational skills. So cooperatives would survive in a country that focuses on the skills that are needed to process the assets that are found in communities. For as long as the focus is, I'm not saying the matric certificate is not important, but the point I'm making is that a matric certificate does not qualify a person to sustain his family in terms of growing vegetables, in terms of providing for the things that they need. All women are wearing sanitary pads that are from Johnson & Johnson, most of them. 3 brothers in New Jersey started a factory that produces the sanitary pads. Even our government is buying Johnson & Johnson sanitary pads for distribution to schools. But there are women in SANCO. Their menstruation is actually made a sustainable market for the people who are manufacturing those things. Let me move forward. So, without knowledge, which is why then I started the Institute for Cooperatives and Community Economic Development. As I am speaking to you, I am in my office in a center that I established using my pension. After SANCO had rejected in a conference in Umtata the establishment of the SANCO Development Institute, it was dismantled after the conference in Umtata. And then the model which I had developed, the cooperatives-based community economic development that SANCO Development Institute was going to implement, and start having the vocational schools in communities to actually provide the kind of skills that are needed by communities to provide for themselves. SANCO in Tata rejected that. I took my model and established an NGO called the Institute for Cooperatives and Community Economic Development. I am now training people here. Not as president of SANCO or as a member of SANCO, I am training people, the community, which is what SANCO was actually destined to, by establishing the SANCO Development Institute. I hear some people talking about the alliance and SANCO standing on its own to vote. What would people vote for? Because SANCO would not have contributed anything that is tangible, that changes the lives of the people. But if SANCO had continued with the SANCO Development Institute, if SANCO had continued with the SANCO Development Institute, there would be branches of the SANCO Development Institute in each and every town where there is a TVET college. SANCO would be having SANCO Development Institutions and training people on how to process waste and generate electricity, how to grow vegetables, how to start consumer community stores, community-owned enterprises, to stop the flocking of communities to towns to leave money in retail stores that are not owned by those communities. That is what people-centered and people-driven development means. So SANCO does not understand itself, its role in building sustainable communities. Let us come to the situation in South Africa. The integrated strategy on promotion of and development of cooperatives. It is a study that was done by the Department of Trade and Industry in 2008. And I won't be blamed for maybe being suspected that I'm lying. I was not part of the study. I found the study having been completed. But it was interesting in the process of writing the model. The integrated strategy 2012 and 2022 recognizes that cooperatives have a long and successful tradition around the world and have proven to be amazingly flexible in meeting a wide range of social and economic human needs. In Kenya, cooperatives contribute 45% of the gross domestic product, 31% of the total national savings and deposits. Cooperatives in Kenya control 70% of the coffee market, 76% of the dairy market, 95% of the cotton. In New Zealand, 22% of the GDP is generated by cooperatives. In addition, cooperatives are responsible for 95% of the dairy market and 95% of the export dairy market. They hold 70% of the meat market, 50% of the farm supply market, 70% of the fertilizer market, 75% of the pharmaceutical, and 62% of the grocery market. In Spain, the cooperative movement produces more than 70 billion euros turnover, and most of these cooperatives are worker-owned cooperatives, which means it's the member is a worker and a shareholder. Cooperatives have a membership of over 800 million represented in the Cooperatives International Alliance. The situation in South Africa is somehow different from what happens in other countries. The South African government has promoted cooperatives at national and provincial level with the aim of enabling small producers to tap into mainstream economic activities. Registered cooperatives increased from 4,061 in 2007 to 22,690 in 2010. And 43,062 in 2013. That is the CIPC data. Because of government promotion of cooperatives. In 2010, a study funded by the European Union that only 2,644 of the then 22,619 registered cooperatives were still functional, a mortality rate of 88%. A study conducted in Free State in 2014 revealed that only 81, which is 87% of the 220 cooperatives considered to be still operational, while 21 no longer functioned and 31 never got off the ground. Reasons cited for failure of cooperatives are as follows: lack of business skills, 80%, no contracts from government, 35%, conflict between members, 21%, cannot compete with informal businesses, 3%, cannot compete with formal businesses, 5%, products not good enough, 6%. Then the question, firstly, let me talk about the state of having high number of registered cooperatives and high failure rate. For the 3,000 and high failure rate of 58% can be attributed to a government-driven process wherein the establishment and registration of new cooperatives is a performance target for government officials linked to their performance bonuses. This means that registration of cooperatives and provision of a grant and limited training provided to cooperatives are measurement tools used to assess contribution made by government to develop cooperatives. Ngicela ukuphinda lo. Ukufa kwama ama-cooperatives kurejistwe kakhulu abe u-43,062 bese kuthi kulawo ma-cooperatives awu-43,000 kufe 88% of them, okusho ukuthi only 12% survive. Akushiwo ukuthi avayedwe, kuthiwa asala ekhona awu-12%. Kwenziwa ukuthi the drive ukuthi kwenziwa ama-cooperative doesn't come from the members, from the community. It's a performance indicator for government officials. Kubhalwa kuma annual performance plans ama-government officials ukuthi manga ama-cooperatives arejistiwe kulo nyaka, manga abanikezwe ama-granti, mangaki atrainiwe, which is why i-training ayinikezwa all members of a cooperative. Umuntu otrain ama-cooperatives akayi kuma-members of a cooperative wonke. Kuthathwa abantu abawu-2 from a cooperative. So uma kutrainwe abantu abawu-30, kusuke kutrainwe kwi-performance, annual performance plan, kuzobhalwa ukuthi kutrainwe 15 cooperatives. Kanti kutrainwe abantu abawu-2 from the cooperative who cannot impart the knowledge abayitholile laphaya kulo kade batrain, because they are not trained facilitators, they are members and workers in a cooperative. So everything is centered around performance bonuses, government officials. The question is, can cooperatives build a secondary economy in South Africa? SANCO asked me to write a discussion document with SANCO structures to engage on whether cooperatives can build a secondary economy. I was also asked to give my own opinion on whether cooperatives can build a second economy. My answer to that question is yes, cooperatives can further develop what is to be seen as the second economy that operates in the periphery, actually make communities participate in mainstream economy and compete on an equal level with the first economy to achieve different goals. The goals that will be achieved by the community are different from the goals of the second economy through cooperatives is to build sustainable communities. And the goals of the first economy is to generate more profit. Elon Musk, is a billionaire, and in South Africa, and all these guys focus more on having billionaires. So the focus is very different because there would, however, be a need for a paradigm shift of the mindset, a different way of thinking and understanding of the role of government in the process of development, and the need to position cooperatives as catalysts for building sustainable communities, transform the economy to include local communities in ownership and control of the economy, as said by Professor Benton. To achieve that, there would be a need for the following: a robust debate that leads to a better understanding of the concept of cooperatives and how cooperatives build sustainability, then agree on how to position cooperatives as catalysts for transforming the economy in South Africa to include underdeveloped communities in ownership and control of the local economies. When that is done, it will be easy to address poverty, unemployment, and inequality, which are usually called the uneven levels of development. Government would need to create a conducive environment for community-centered and community-driven development initiatives to enable communities to actively participate in their own development. Instead of building houses for poor people, government would need to understand the concept of housing cooperatives and therefore design systems that would enable communities to use the concept of cooperatives to become self-reliant and self-sufficient. Training institutions such as the TVET colleges and business schools of universities would need to produce the kind of skills that are needed by communities to actively participate in their own development and ownership of local economies. The focus would be more on building sustainable communities through cooperatives and move away from making cooperatives training the end product of the process. Community-based organization would have to become actively involved in organizing and mobilizing communities to get involved in their own development, which means SANCO would become actively involved in organizing and mobilizing communities to get involved in their own development, in the same way that we organize communities to make South Africa ungovernable. Using community assets to develop communities and move away from selling community assets to outside so-called investors who are actually exploiters of communities and community assets. In conclusion, I hope that SANCO is going to ask this question of whether cooperatives can build the second economy, to seriously look at how SANCO could practically translate its motto of people-centered, people-driven development, to see whether there are common areas of interest between a civic movement like SANCO and the cooperative movement. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Gqeberha. You have said a mouthful to us about the cooperative. That means we have got a stake from our municipalities, as Comrade Bengu is narrating the story about Makanda and cooperatives that took a decision to close potholes. That is, as SANCO or as leadership SANCO, let us lead by an example to the people. Let us try and apply skill development as by a SITO. I don't want into Gqeberha Ndiwagqobhe. Comrade Bengu, we have said it and clearly. So ngikhalela ukuthi xa sizawudlulela unobhala uzotsho into yoba sizawuthini na ke ngedocument kaComrade uDensanje njengoba engekho. But what I want to ask from you guys is to give again the round of applause from both of the documentation that has been presented in front of us. Can we do that? Thank you very much. Comrade Juba, can you lead me?
No, thank you very much, Comrade. Yes, the document more on matters of crime and how we can respond to issues that relate to crime. It has already been circulated to the regions, troops which are regional secretaries and also police members. So it will, the members of branches, members of communities, will get it through the normal structures. We'll also post it on our WhatsApp, PFO WhatsApp group, so people will get that document. It talks to how we should be responding to matters that relate to crime going back to 1994, when we as community leaders cleaning our state, and not relying on the police. Remember 1994, police call the system. They were not allowed in our communities because they were working with the apartheid government or the Bantustan's authorities. So hence we say if communities were able to take charge of their own streets while they had a combined force of criminals who were terrorizing communities, forced, armed to the teeth of law enforcement agent, armed by apartheid, protecting the apartheid. We might as well go back, but now, next to us, we have the police who currently are working with communities, claiming back our street. We can no longer be tolerant on the pillaging of our infrastructure by criminals. Let's protect communities. I think the document of Prof. Densandi speaks to that. So we would implore regions, branches, and leadership of the PSC, also from working with regions, to interrogate that document and input to it, so that by the time there are special RGCs or extended RSCs, at least document that will be coming out, or submissions that will be coming out of those gathering, can enrich our provincial conference going forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Comrade Nobala. Just because these documents are still to be discussed by the regions, 3 of them, I think we are not going to discuss them here. We can just ask those few clarities, but I just am not going to allow more than 5 people, so that we can be out of this meeting. Is there anyone who wants a clarity, who wants to ask something from Dr. and from Comrade Bill, I can give them that few minutes, so that after that we can close the session. Thank you very much. I think somebody shouted because, well, if I don't see your hand here.
I'm trying to raise my hand, but I don't know what's happening.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I see your hand. Okay, I'm noting your hand, Comrade Gqeberha. Is there anyone? I just see one hand. That's the second one from Comrade Vusi. The third one. The third one.
Molweni.
The third one.
I'm the third one.
I'm shutting the door now. The third one. Okay, thank you very much. Let me give you a Comrade Gqeberha to speak. Oh, your network.
Thank you, Comrade.
Okay. Yeah,
no, it was not me, Chair. I can hear you clearly. Am I audible enough, Chair?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
I've noted you. I understand.
Thank you, Comrade Chair. Greetings to the provincial chairperson, the provincial secretary. Allow me to say all protocols observed. Gqeberha, Comrade Chair. Let me welcome the 2 presentations. Chair, mine is just a clarity in relation to the presentation made by Comrade Dr. Botha in relation to the nomination of representative of people at municipal level. I just want to know, Chair, if his input is also taking into consideration the reconfigured alliance concept or content, or he is saying we need to just forget about everything that we resolved as an alliance and go back to the basics of SANCO as a civic organization. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Comrade Gqeberha. I think, Comrade Gqeberha, that is your question. Let me pass to Vusi. I'll hear from you, Comrade Gqeberha, if it's not clear, but I think it's clear. Comrade Vusi, you are audible.
Thank you, Makumar. Let me first appreciate the session that is dealing with the documents that we're going to discuss in our oncoming conference. Three things that I need to raise. Thank you very much, Comrade Gqeberha and Comrade Pengu. I'm one of the people that voted in that conference, that the first conference in Gqeberha in 1992. Thank you very much, Comrade Tony and the collective, Comrade Chairperson. One, I need to raise the question of this alliance of us as SANCO, that is the African National Congress. I understand the policy and the principle of SANCO is that we were going to be part of the organization that was taking into account the needs of the people as SANCO. Now, the problem we're having is that in two consecutive what is known elections, I may mention the first one, 2021, we as the SANCO, we were voting for the African National Congress. But the problem now, once we vote the African National Congress because of its own policies that are more biased towards the SANCO, Comrade Gqeberha, but the problem now is that we are embarking on a program of having coalitions, comrades. These coalitions are problematic because are no longer leading the aspiration of the people, because we vote for the ANC because we're having the program, it's having the programs that are biased towards the poor. But now when they go inside the coalition, they work with the opposition parties that were against us when we're having our manifesto. I need to check now the sustainability of this alliance of SANCO, because now what we are implementing in municipalities is not the ideology and the principles of the African National Congress. That is the first problem. I remember well, we had also a meeting, PEC meeting, as the Eastern Cape. I'm the chairperson of the OR Tambo region, comrades. We had the PEC meeting in East London Town Hall. I think there by April, last April, on the 5th of April. We were discussing the question of the independent candidates that were voting against the African National Congress. And that was thrown to the SANCO platform, whereas SANCO is not contesting elections. We need now in our documents and in our conference to discuss that, because I don't see any problem now if you say we're having somebody who was an independent candidate and ultimately he vote for another party, and as SANCO we need to punish that comrade, because Rule 5 of the Constitution is not allowing for that, because it says SANCO is apolitical. Also, Comrade Ruth is helping us a lot, especially myself. I'm a former president of the National Cooperative Movement of South Africa. It's long we've been talking about these cooperatives, but it's very difficult to implement. For instance, I'm the OR Tambo municipality. They are paper cooperatives, Comrade Ruth. In the OR Tambo municipality, we're having an agency, which is Ndinga, is having its own cooperatives. They are in paper. In the OR Tambo LED department, we're having cooperatives. They are in paper. the department itself, the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, they are having cooperatives there in paper. It's high time that we need to follow exactly what you are talking about in terms of saying, SANCO, we need to develop now a cooperative institute, because SANCO is having a problem of not having its own training standards, whereby we are going to take direct, cooperatives are more powerful than any other entity in South Africa. Lastly, I had an opportunity of being educated by SANCO International in Sweden. What Comrade Gqeberha is talking about, the question of waste material, the question of energy, is what is practiced in Sweden and Hasselholm. They are not using a lot of electricity there. They are using the waste material and they are generating electricity out of those waste material. It is very important that we need to embark on those activities, Comrade Gqeberha. Thank you very much, my leaders.
Thank you very much, Comrade Gqeberha. Your questions are directed to both of our presenters. Let me take you, Comrade Ayanda.
Yeah, I think I must use yours, Chair. Fine. Thanks, Chair. Thanks a lot. Let me firstly greet our provincial chairperson and provincial secretary, also greet our special guest, former SGN, former president. My name is Ayanda Selim Kanjo from Wartambo, the regional secretary of SANCO in this region. I think my chair has covered me in some areas, but I think I would like us to have few questions in line to what the former president has presented here. She once reflected in one thing when she said, seemingly SANCO does not understand its role. I think let me just taking that that quote and go to Doc Tata Ubota. In relation to the role of SANCO in the councils, in his paper, he wrote that the SANCO representatives in council must know that they represent the community and must give regular feedbacks to the community that elected him or her. I think I fully agree with that view that he raised there. But the challenge, in my view, will go to a point where I would say, in this instance, we as members of SANCO represent SANCO in councils, but not in the name of SANCO, but we represent in the name of the African National Congress. Now, my point in that aspect, hence I'm fully agreeing with it, but I would like us to note that one. And in his, in the same presentation, he said there's nothing prohibiting SANCO from participating in local government elections, provided it does not lose the peoples for which it was founded. That is, to present the people on a non-partisan basis. I think my view where goes to in this one was I'm reading this point, trying to relate to what I said before, that as SANCO, we represent our people through the deployment of the African National Congress. Now, when Udok says SANCO it's not, there's nothing prohibited to participate, does it mean we as SANCO we can just go and contest elections? Or I would like him at least to elaborate on that aspect. Hence, I noted that thing, because in my view, I think if we can encourage that thing, is the one that can create many independence that we are seeing or these mushrooming non-political organizations that usually used to grow, especially on the elections time. There are many that affects us in the Eastern Cape. You will remember some of our members. Yeah, I think in the elections of 2016, they were seeing civic independence. Now, these elections of 2021, we have a new thing that called SANCO. So hence, I would like just to have his view in relation to that one. And lastly, on the point of UDOC, I think it's also the issue of the reconfiguration of the alliance and our relations. I think it will be important that at least as much as he wrote this paper, whenever he had time, to also reflect in relation to that, because I believe it will be important that at least as SANCO, we must be able to identify it as clearly and our role, especially when it comes to our alliance components. Lastly, on the presentation by our former president, I think I'm covered by a number of things and what she raised, especially in her presentation when he even came up with what we call how should we respond in this thing is giving the support in making sure that our and our communities take serious the issue of cooperatives, and our government also that it should also make sure that at least they do use these platforms in a way that will assist our people. So I think those I have those few things, Chair, that I just would like to engage on. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much about the questions and clarity. The presenters to take the podium.
Yes, just one hand, only one.
Okay. Yes.
mandizisele ma-comrades apha endlini comrades akukho kuninzi endiza kuthetha because sekuthethiwe okwam endicinga noba mandikuveze kucomrades uyibiza kazakaleyo imbokotho ebizela uthetha comrades siyayibulela le report uyithethe from uDr Thozamile siyanika comrades kwaye ngiyithethe kwacaca kodwa ke ndifuna ukufuna nje le ndaba kamama le ndaba ye-co-ops i-co-ops thina apha eBhayi sizenzile nam njengomnye wam ndicinga uba sisi-victims and ze-co-ops sizenzile azisebenzelanga amaninzi bethu koko sisishiya nje sinamatyala sihlukumezekile sizivulile kuba kakuthiwa uzenzele zivalile kule-co-ops zethu zingakhange zibe ziyasebenza uthi xa usiya kule minyango ye-officials ube uzazi noba uyi-complete futhi uyazi noba uzawuyakala but sihamba ngeemali zethu si-end up siblame abantu abanamatyala yona i-development uthetha kakuhle comrades uthetha kamnandi intoba let us phakama and nale ndaba thina bomama senze business for abantu because each and every month thina sinegexesha but asiphakami sizenzele aba-sanitary pads siyazama kokheli but kunzima ingakumbe Nelson Mandela and I just wish inkokheli zethu sikhe zizivizithele ezi-officials each and every department even le ndaba ye-NPOs siyastruglisha we need to clean our areas have illegal dumping sites sezide zaba zii-legal dumping sites whereas ezi-illegal dumping sites siyazama siyafuna namo-TLB sine-co-op sine-NPOs asincedakali sihleli nobumdaka as if asizonkokheli abahlali bajonge thina as i-leadership because zi-leadership ezi-areas zethu nasezi-branchini zethu. Kodwa uxakwe kuphendula into yoba why le nkunkumi sekoneni ingathathwa. Uxakwe sithi si-collected singabafazi sidibene sifuna usebenza, umsebenzi awukwazi uphuma because asinazo ii-funds, kunzima. Asinabo abantu abasibhekhelayo into yoba masiphume sihambe siyosebenza. Siyimise kaninzi kweyethu iward i-project sifuna uyenza. We do not have ii-funds, we do not have ii-backups zabantu basahambe siyosebenza. Uya kwezi office kuthiwe i-TLB E1 izawusebenza icluster yonke. So we are really struggling. I just wish into yokuba ukuba ngaba indlela eku-operatewa ngayo inophela kwaziyo into yoba nabantu singabantu siyakhokela. Inzima into yoba ubekwe ephalini kuthiwe khokela but i-development akwazi ukuza nayo ebahlalini. Enkosi comrades.
Enkosi Mbokodo, mandinikezele ke komnye noba nguphi uzaqalisa ukuphendula. Ndinikezela kuni ke.
Chair, mandiqale. I've tried to note the question. Please, if I don't answer it properly, you can just clarify if I missed some of it. The first question was about the nomination of representatives representing SANCO or the ANC. The question was asked, that's my question, that my point about SANCO being able to represent SANCO members or communities, take into account the reconfiguration of to become part of or influence policy in government, they agree that in this election, you are going to campaign on this platform, which takes into account all the different interests of the various groupings. So in that way, you are not representing only your party interest, you are campaigning for the collective view of the parties in the coalition. So there should be no problem there. Now the question is, that is linked to that is, if we are nominated by SANCO to stand up for the elections, but we also went into this campaign or the elections as on a platform of the ANC, do we now represent the SANCO interest or the interest of the ANC? It's a very tricky one. It's a very, very tricky one, in that once you are in government, you no longer represent purely your party interest. You represent the people who voted you into power. Those members of parliament that are governing the country, they are not governing the country on behalf of the party. They are governing they are governing on behalf of. I don't know if you listened to the interview with Comrade Thabo Mbeki, I think it was last week or so, where he said that there's in one region or branch, a member of the ANC told the comrades in the meeting that we must change the constitution of the country to ensure that every time the ANC wins when it goes to elections. Comrade Tabo's response was that that was absolutely wrong. You cannot change the constitution of the country to represent a party interest. The constitution of the country represents the people of the country, of the entire country. The same thing that I want to say about SANCO ANC alliance. Once you are elected and you are now a councillor, you no longer represent the interest or represent SANCO, represent ANC, you represent the community. You have to be interested in what the community wants. And you know, because when you went there, you know that you've got to clean the streets, refuse has got to be collected, there should be no potholes, there should be electricity, there should be water, stormwater drainage, and so forth. Those issues cut across party political divide, because every resident wants to live in a clean community where refuse is being collected. There are clinics, there are recreational facilities for children to play, there are schools. All of those things are not party political aligned. They represent every party. Every party that has stood up for elections has said those things one way or the other. The emphasis may be different. So I'm saying, in trying to answer that question, for me, whether you went in, once you actually got elected, whether you went in and the card of the ANC or SANCO, the most important thing is that you went in there knowing that this is what my community wants. And if you're not delivering on that, SANCO that nominated you to go and stand up there as ANC or whatever should be able to recall you. If the ANC doesn't recall you, SANCO should actually say, we put you there to represent these issues, to represent us on these issues. You are no longer doing that, you are now doing your own thing. Because, and so far as service delivery is concerned, I don't see the difference between what the ANC stands for and what SANCO stands for. There may be, but the problem is in the behavior of the people, because the interests are no longer the interests of the people. They are individual interests. People are serving their own personal agendas. That is where the difference is. And if that is the culture of ANC, then SANCO should say no. If that is the culture of SANCO, the community should say no to that. For me, that's my position on that particular issue. The coalitions, unfortunately, whether we like them or not, they are the future of this country in terms of governance. Because coalition arise not because of a choice of a particular political party, but because political parties have failed to gain absolute majority in a particular election. Therefore, because the Constitution says you shall govern, those who have been given a chance to govern will govern and must govern. We were called into the Nelson Mandela Metro early this year, 3 or 4 of us, to facilitate a discussion between the ANC and the DA. Both ANC and DA actually were unanimous in that please come and help us to have a meeting or meetings to discuss how we can work together in this metro. When we look at them, their votes, ANC had 40% plus minus, DA had 40% plus minus. Both of them constituted about 80% of the electorate of the votes of the metro. But both of them were unable to govern because they had to form alliances with the smaller parties, and the smaller parties had their own agendas, and they were manipulating the fact that they were kingmakers in those municipalities, and therefore become the key players with 1 or 2 votes. And that, for me, is not in the interest of the community. Because how can the whole constituents of Nelson Mandela vote 40%, or rather 80% put together, and then be governed only by a party that has got only 1 or 2 votes? That is where now democracy is really being undermined. The right of the people to elect who they want to govern them. And then independent candidates voting as members of SANCO, and then being punished by SANCO for voting on their own or something like that, I'm not sure. But for me, the Constitution, if I'm not mistaken, when amended, it allows individual candidates to stand up for elections. Now, the problem with the current system or the system before was that people can only vote political parties. And the communities have no ability to elect who they want from their own communities. Because if they are disgruntled with the ANC that it is not delivering what they want, they should have the choice to do so. And that choice could be SANCO. That choice could be an individual member of SANCO. For me, if you ask me the question, should SANCO stand for election in a constituency, I have no problem with that. I honestly do not have a problem with that. Because I've just said there are coalitions of smaller parties, including environmental groups, including LGBTQ, including whatever. Why would you then deny those people who have got the right to be part of a coalition? And if they want to now put up candidates to vote for themselves as individuals and they believe they can win, what's wrong with that? Similarly, if SANCO feels that the ANC, EFF, whatever, but DA is no longer doing what I want, we as the community of KwaZakele can put together candidates to say we are going to stand up as a community and put up candidates, and we are sure that we will win this, and we want people who will stand and do the things that we want in our community. Personally, I do not have a problem with that. I do not also have a problem if SANCO forms an alliance with ANC, but we must not confuse the right of a civic association with that of a political party. A political party has got the right to pursue its ideological agenda. A civic association has got the right to represent the communities who are non-aligned in terms of that, because they could be made up of various interest groups that have got nothing to do with a particular political party, and therefore must not be forced to do so. They have the choice. This is a democratic right country. So for me, that's my view on that, and I believe in it. So I don't see why a person who's put up by SANCO to stand up as an independent candidate should be punished thereafter or in whatever way. Now I'm not so sure. You are saying that while we go in as SANCO, the challenge is that we go in there as SANCO, but we now end up representing the ANC because we went on an ANC card. I think I've partly answered that question. I'm not sure if I've fully answered it, but I can still say that my view is when it comes to civil service delivery, I do not see a difference between delivering water through ANC or delivering water through SANCO is different, as long as you're doing the right thing. You are delivering quality service to people, you are cleaning the roads, you are making sure that if you allow you grant a contract for civil construction, the person who is appointed or the contractor that is appointed to do the job has the necessary skills to do the job. At the moment, I live here in Johannesburg, Pretoria. I have seen 2 road construction projects collapsing from BEE companies. And I'm talking about roads that could cost millions, and I'm saying tens or if not hundreds of billions, collapsing after a BEE company has worked on it for 6 months to 12 months and does a really sloppy job, completely sloppy job. There's nothing to do with being BEE or not. When you win a contract, you've got to do the work that you promised to do because you were nominated or appointed on the basis that you have got the capacity, the skills necessary to do the job. Not because you are black. The blackness opens the door for you to get a contract. That's not enough. After getting the contract, you must be able to perform. If you can't perform, then you've got to go back and give that contract to somebody who can do the job. Otherwise, that's why we have got the crisis that we have in our cities. The last point I want to comment on is, this BEE 30% allocation in every municipal township area. There's nothing wrong with it, 30%. What is wrong is how it is done. For example, if I have a contract, I win a contract of 10 million, and I'm told that After you've won the contract, you must give 30% to BEE. Which BEE? Will that BEE company be evaluated whether it's got the necessary skills to do the job? Or am I going to now have the burden of having to put up another tender to select who is the most appropriate and capacitated subcontractor to do the job? Because that is why now you're getting fights in the townships. That people come in, they have no skills, but they demand, give us the 30%. You take 30% out of the 30% of what? If you are given a contract of 100 million, it means 30 million must go to this company, which may not necessarily have the skills to do the job. And therefore, nepotism comes in. Patronage comes in, because you've got to give your friends and your comrades, or those who put much pressure, even the corrupt groupings within the community. So for me, that's really some of the things that I think we need to think about and think carefully how we do best on these things. I hope I have covered. Chair, I don't know if there's somebody who thinks that I have not answered his or her question, please, then just remind me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Dr. Gqeberha. Bethunana ngenxa yexesha ndibona kukhona izandla ezidanyazayo, ndiyaxolisa. Ixesha eli lisikile into nayo kuba ke sesifuna into kokubana abantu bazifumane ezi clarities. Ndingavuya nje into yoba nivele nixole, I'm not going to have the second round as babe ndibalile. Sizawunikezela nje ezi clarities kuphela so that sikhululane abantu sebeqinile. Masinikezele ku-comrade former president wethu naye anike i-clarity kwi-questions bezijongisiwe. Over to you, comrade.
Thank you very much. The question directed to me was
ndicela ukuyacelwa into yoba mawuphinde uvele xa uthetha, comrade.
I have opened e-video, then I can't control ukuthi.
Oh, makumuviswe makumuviswe Okay, thank you very much. Uyavela ke.
Okay, thank you. The first question directed to me relates to what I had said, which was SANCO does not understand its role. I'm saying that because the motto of SANCO is people-centered and people-driven development. That is the motto of SANCO, which means SANCO's role is to facilitate active participation of communities in their development. People-centered, people-driven development. And you don't necessarily need to be a councillor or an MP or what to do that. You only need to have one, the knowledge institution that is positioned to provide training and facilitate people-driven, people-centered and people-driven development programs on the ground. Like it was done in Mondragon, like it is being done in Kenya, like it was done in Cody, Canada, like it is done in Sweden, in Italy. No one would go to jail because that person has organized communities to put together their resources, establish their own training institution, apply for accreditation to the status, apply for money from the status to actually train the people on the ground, and apply for money from the National Empowerment Fund to actually buy the technologies that would be needed by communities to process their waste, to grow their own vegetables. No one would put you in jail for doing that. When I am saying SANCO does not understand its role, I mean that SANCO has a motto. You are wearing t-shirts. On those t-shirts, it is written people-centered and people-driven development. But it ends there. The second issue, when you have done that, you have an institution that is driving that, you would then have a strategic, well-structured program designed to enable communities to drive their own development. Now, if SANCO doesn't have an institution, a knowledge, an institution that is driving knowledge, and SANCO doesn't have a strategic program that is designed to facilitate active participation of people in their development, how is SANCO then translating into practice its own motto? That's what I mean when I say SANCO doesn't understand the kind of an animal it is, and SANCO doesn't understand its role, because in the conference that was held in Durban, where I was elected president, a decision was taken that the office of the president should drive the program of cooperatives in South Africa. In Mthatha. So in the 5 years that program was taken forward, that resolution was taken forward, SANCO Development Institute was established. The cooperatives-based community economic development was written by the president. It was presented in the conference in Mthatha. And the conference in Mthatha resolved to not discuss what was presented by the president, to take SANCO forward, position SANCO to actually implement the people-centered and people-driven development approach in South Africa. After Mthatha conference, SANCO Development Institute was dissolved. It was a decision that was taken by SANCO to dissolve its own vehicle that it was supposed to use to actually train people in SANCO in all the provinces to drive development, people-centered and people-driven development using the concept of cooperatives. The second question also relates to that. The comrade is saying, we have formed cooperatives. They did not work for us. You did not form real cooperatives with an understanding of what kind of an animal a cooperative is. You registered a cooperative without knowing what is a cooperative and what is the role of a cooperative in building sustainable communities. That is why, instead of mobilizing the resources in the community and organizing the community, you ran to offices of government. In the presentation that I made, I did not say in Mondragon. It was a government structure that established the vocational school. I said it was the reverend who was driving the concept and mobilizing the community. I did not say they got money from government to design the paraffin heater and the paraffin stove. I said the vocational college produced 5 engineers and the 5 engineers were tasked to design the paraffin heater and the paraffin stove. And the first factory that was established to produce those things, which we also bought and we are still using today, only had 24 people working in that factory. From the community, they were not paid by government. There was no grant from government. So, what you establish, you are registering cooperatives in South Africa. I said that in my input. You are registering cooperatives to government officials to meet their annual performance targets. If an official has put as a target that is signed by the DG that this year the department will register 100 cooperatives. 100 cooperatives will be registered. It doesn't mean that those cooperatives know what kind of an animal they are. They are registered because the official has to meet the annual performance target. Now let us come to the issue of there is no man. That's the argument, there is no man. 17 million people in South Africa are given 350 rands by government every month. If they understood the concept of cooperatives, they would save 10 rands a month towards the establishment of their own cooperative bank, those 17 million people. In 1 month, if each one of them saves 10 rand, they would have saved 170 million 1 month. Because cooperatives are a game of numbers. You mobilize, that's why they are building sustainable communities. If you are alone, you won't be able to save 17 million. But if there is 17 million of you and you are saving 10 rands, you actually save 170 million a month. And you can finance your enterprises. Now, let us reduce the number. 250 CWPs in South Africa. They work for 8 days, which means they have time. They have time to do other things. To set up their own poultry farming project, to set up their piggery project, to set up their vegetable growing project. Again, they save 100 rands a month. If 250,000 people save 100 rands a month, that is 25 million rands in 1 month. And that is the power communities have, but they don't understand that they have that power. They are more than the people who control the economy. They don't understand community economic development strategies. They don't understand what is a cooperative and how you use a cooperative to mobilize resources in the community for the community to become the master of its destiny. So that is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the registered so-called cooperatives. If it was a hospital with 43,000 people and 88% of them died, that hospital would have been closed down. You don't hear the noise from the opposition about the failure rate of cooperatives because it serves them well. When black people understand the concept of cooperatives, all checkers bayovala, no Spar bayovala, or Pick and Pay bayovala, or Boxer bayovala, because communities will set their own consumer stores and they will buy what they produce. So let us agree and confess that we don't understand the concept of cooperatives, and let us subject ourselves and humble ourselves to get the correct training. Orania is a sustainable community. It is here in South Africa, established when the ANC government is in power. That community is a sustainable community. They use the concept of cooperatives, and no one can take them to task, because the policy and the principles of cooperative are saying a cooperative is formed by people with a common bond and a common interest, and their common interest is to preserve Africans. They are Afrikaners. They want to preserve their culture, and they are developing themselves in a space called Orania. Government won't shut them down. But Act egunyaza ukuba khona kwama-cooperatives eSouth Africa bayothi akuyona yakho yini government le, akuyona ka-2005 now wayiphasisa, and bayoveza the international principles of cooperatives. It's people with common interest who want to develop themselves, and they have developed themselves. Thank you very much. I'm very hard on this subject because we are talking about what we need to discuss in the conference, and if we want to discuss how SANCO positions itself, we must be as brutal as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Bengu. We have said a mouthful, and yamazi thunana nge-cooperatives hayi ungancama uyazithula and uzithanda ukufa. I think Comrade Chair and Comrade Secretary njoba senize nazo mveza ngokufuneka siseseke thina ke bomama sibabelela apha kuye simtsale ngebhatyi apha ngemvokanye ejisi loo nto ayinxibileyo uComrade uMaMbhengu, ukwenzela ngoba Comrade Chair and Comrade Secretary she must come back to us and then sihlale phansi sixoxe ke ngoku akhe asenzele ezibonwayo kwezi cooperatives njengokusimazi. I know him now, cooperatives, and uyazenza successfully. So xa ndizonikezela uComrade Chairperson Ithunana asenzele ivote okokuqala mandiqale nam ndizibelele apha bethunana ndixolise uba ngabani ngendandiphatha kanye ndanetha umlomo wam uye wasindwa plus ne-excitement ibe yandiphatha kakhulu kuba abantu kudala ndibalangazelela. Chairperson, the leadership yonke yokufunana, the leadership the leadership mandihlele nami egameni lo msebenzi yaye ngifakile kakuhle kodwa ke akho nginamasa nendlela akho ndlela ihamba itshona so nomuntu ke uba njalo ngaloo mazwi ndiyabulela. Chairperson useseqosha konke avale then ke kube siyakhululeka over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much Makhumalo, but ndifuna ukuqinisekisa hayi usiphethe kakuhle mama, usiqhube kakuhle ngase usoloko uyibambe ngolahlobo. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank everybody for taking part in this important gathering, especially our presenters. In terms of the processes, Amaqabane will remember we have established the committees. There is a committee that is led by myself, policy development and constitutional amendment. Definitely, this document will be presented into that committee as how are we going to process them. But of course, comrades, these are discussion documents. Discussion documents will remain discussion documents, which means, therefore, we've got a responsibility to discuss them and come to the conference with proposals. If we want to pull out of the alliance, there is no problem with that. that need to be discussed, but as we speak, we are part of this alliance. We must not have any confusion around that. Chairperson, I'm convinced that as the province, working together as this collective, we are on track on the renewal and rebuilding of SANCO in this province. We are also confident, Chair, that if this leadership will deliver a conference that is all-inclusive and united, when we listen to this presentation and also since discussing that would mean, therefore, we are on track. As we all know that our province, therefore, we are saying as this leadership, we must maintain that. We must not drop the ball. Now, comrades, as we're approaching this conference, we know the challenges that we are faced with, not only as a province, but nationally, politically and otherwise. The challenges of service delivery, as we know, in our communities, issues of poverty, poor living conditions. As we speak, makabane niyaz, genzulu zobusuku banamhlanje, ipetrol yenyuka, but kwenye kala imali ayinyuki. High rate of unemployment, crime and corruption, you can mention them. But comrades, we must not lose our focus as SANCO. Our organizations are fragmented, occupied by factional battles. As SANCO, we are not immune from that. As we speak, Makabane, we all know that our national structure is not participating in the alliance programs because of the cancer that I've mentioned. As a province, therefore, we can't fold our arms. We have a responsibility to ensure that SANCO nationally is a united organization and it take a center stage to play its role, which is enshrined in our constitution. In so doing, as the province, we must ensure that we put our house in order, because we must ensure that our alliance in the province is intact and siyasebenzisana, because for now, Comrade Porter, this is a decision of the conference. Till such time this decision is rescinded, is then we can say we don't participate with the alliance. We would like to call upon the ANC-led government and public sector unions to resolve their wage disputes amicably. As SANCO, we are aware that negotiations is a give and take and therefore should meet up halfway. But in reality, this situation will impact negatively. Having said that, Comrade Chair and colleagues, the decision of our allies that they are not going to support the ANC in the coming national elections are worried, because that would mean, therefore, nithi masibuyele kwa Faro, a luxury that we can't afford. So the siya kwa Faro. Umuntu ofuna kwa Faro makaya yedwa, hleza afike ne Faro elo lingekho. Our experience as we speak, these coalitions are not and will never work, Makabane. So you have to understand, by their nature, they present a counter-revolution as far as I'm concerned. I don't care who says what. Yes, there are problems within the alliance, especially within the ANC. But for me, it can't be a solution to leave the ANC, because to the ANC. See, she has it my share. I am saying it, therefore, finally, Chair, let's go back to the growing boards. Let's build a strong SANCO in the province. Let's ensure that district committees, area committees, branches, zones, etc. are in place. Let us ensure that even the alliance structures in our areas are in place and are involved in programs. Once again, Chairperson, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, especially the office of the Secretary, to make this a progressive session, and for me, this was very much successful. We are not competing with anybody. We are not competing with anybody as a province, but all what I can say, we're a province at work. Thank you very much. Organization. Indambo zikum ke emhlali wesession njengosihlalo ndiyivalile le nhlanganiso. Thank you very much.